The Guardian, the newspaper of posh liberal Britain, the Bible of Belsize Park, seems to have it in for spite. The antagonism is very much mutual. Still, when we attack The Guardian for its bourgeois elitism, for its obnoxious identity politics, or its misanthropic greenism, we don't just make stuff up about it, or baselessly smear it. The same cannot be said for Guardian writers' periodic attacks on us in recent years. Just a few weeks ago, the newspaper slurred us as a hard-right populist magazine, in a deranged hit piece about Spike contributor, author and comedian Andrew Doyle. Hard right is apparently now Guardian house style when it comes to writing about Spike. Hard right website, sneered one of its columnists in 2019. Mad old George Monbiot thinks we are the hard right mouthpiece of American billionaires because we once gladly partnered with a US libertarian foundation to organise a series of events on freedom of speech, a value that has hardly been beloved by right-wing extremists historically. Because let's be clear, that's what the Guardian bores mean when they smear us as hard right. They mean we're right-wing extremists, fascist adjacent, spewers of bigotry. It's a smear and they know it is. Either that or they've never bothered to actually read us, which given the Guardian's reputation for sloppiness cannot be ruled out, I suppose. Had they read Spike, they'd know that our two great causes are freedom of speech and democracy. We see them as fundamentally progressive values, as the inheritance of the radical working class struggle for suffrage and fundamental rights. We're also pro-choice and anti-monarchy. We've long argued for a generous but sane migration policy. Apparently, all of that makes us right-wing nutcases. When we rail against the orthodoxies of today's supposed liberals and progressives, we do so because we believe them to be deeply illiberal and regressive. We are critics of environmentalism because it immiserates the poor to salve the consciences of the elites. We loathe woke identity politics because it is resuscitating racial thinking under the name of anti-racism. If we are right-wing extremists, we also have an odd habit of trenchantly opposing right-wing extremists. When the alt-right kicked off, we called out its pond scum racism. When racist riots gripped England this past summer, we lamented the grotesque rise of white identity politics and blasted those who were making excuses for it. We are populists. We see the electoral revolt against technocracy as a hugely welcome development, with tremendous potential to democratise politics. But we're never shy about criticising the more harebrained players on the right, left or in between, vying for the populist crown. When Donald Trump and his more conspiratorial cronies tried to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election, we slammed it as a clown show that made a mockery of democracy. So no, Spiked is not hard right. And to be honest, I take particular exception to being accused of running a reactionary publication by The Guardian. Indeed, one could easily argue that The Guardian much better fits the traditional definition of hard right, given the positions it has taken in recent years, and its alarmingly high tolerance for bigotries of various kinds. Opposition to democracy, belief in a rigid social hierarchy in which the elites lord it over their supposed moral inferiors, has long been a staple of hard right thought. And it's also, arguably, a pretty neat summation of the Guardianistas' worldview, if their spluttering response to Brexit was anything to go by. I know they still can't get this through their thick skulls, but Metropolitan Liberals' response to the Brexit referendum was shameful. Arguably, it was the most elitist, anti-democratic spasm this nation has experienced since ordinary people won the vote. The biggest democratic mandate in our history was dismissed as mad, bad and illegitimate, and the great and good pontificated openly in public about how best to thwart it. No more so than in the pages of The Guardian. Its leader column staked out a somewhat convoluted anti-Brexit position, variously calling for a soft Brexit, i.e. not Brexit, or citizens' assemblies to resolve Brexit, presumably by reversing it. Many of its contributors, meanwhile, were much more explicit, openly calling for Brexit to be stopped, in spite of the tremendous damage this would do to democracy, which is all pretty extreme behaviour in my book. Then there were the trans wars and the witch hunting of left-wing women for the crime of defending their rights. The Guardian became a key arena in this. Columnist Suzanne Moore resigned from The Guardian in 2020, following a years-long internal hate campaign against her, waged by lunatics who think her support for sex-based rights amounted to sickening transphobia. Hundreds of Moore's colleagues went into open revolt because she had the temerity to suggest that men shouldn't be able to use women's toilets or rape crisis centres. Unwitting or not, this campaign against Moore and feminists like her amounted to putrid misogyny, and Guardian higher-ups failed to stare it down. The paper's actual reporting on trans issues has been a horror show as well. Remember the Wee Spa scandal? In 2021, a woman went viral for confronting staff at a Korean spa in Los Angeles, demanding to know why a man was parading around his semi-erect penis in the women's changing rooms. Guardian reports cast doubt on the woman's claims, presenting her as a religious nut and repeating baseless speculation that it might have all been staged. Not only did the story turn out to be true, the alleged flash hit in question turned out to have 2 prior convictions for indecent exposure. Do you know what the hard right has also been known for historically? Anti-Semitism. An alarming amount of which has crept into the Guardian's cartoon section in recent years. From a cartoon of Benjamin Netanyahu puppeteering British politicians to a cartoon of Jewish former BBC chairman Richard Sharp carrying a box full of gold and a puppet of Rishi Sunak. The Guardian apologised for the Sharp cartoon at least. The cartoonist himself admitted it was anti-Semitic while saying it was unintentional. But how does this keep happening? I don't expect plaudits for saying that we at Spiked have never published an anti-Semitic cartoon. It's really not that difficult. Incidentally, restaurant critic Jay Rayner, who used to write for The Guardian's sister paper, The Observer, recently accused The Guardian of failing to root out anti-Semites within its ranks. So, in sum, it takes some real brass neck for The Guardian to accuse Spiked of being hard right. After all, there's one publication here that has called for democracy to be subverted, that's been accused of harbouring misogynists and anti-Semites, that publishes cartoons that wouldn't look out of place in Der Stürmer. And it isn't us. Thanks so much for watching. If you would like to support our work and stick it to the Guardian smear merchants while you're at it, please do donate to Spike's Christmas appeal. Spiked is funded by you, our readers and viewers and listeners, so anything you can give is greatly appreciated. We've also got a very special offer on at the moment. Those who donate £50 or more this Christmas will be sent one of these lovely and exclusive Spike mugs in the post. UK addresses only, I'm afraid. To find out more and to make your donations, go to spiked-online.com/donate. That's spiked-online.com/donate.